Welcome back to the AEC video series. In this series, we're going to be covering in detail the plan's settings. So the first thing we want to do is get to AEC Central, so Components, Account Expiration Control, and then we can either click on Payment Plans from the top menu and then on Plans, or we can click on the icon itself. Once you get to the Payment Plans Manager, you're going to actually see a listing of your current payment plans. We're going to be concerned with adding a new one and going over all the settings. So let's click on New. Let's give it a name. We'll call it New Plan. Published means is it available to the user itself in the front end. And visible means is it going to be visible on the plans page on the front end to the user. And what I mean by the plans page is the AEC generated one. If you set it to not visible, you can still do a direct link, which we'll cover here in a second, to the plan, and you can also use it for fallback. So it's visible in the back end. It still can be used, but when you set visible to no, the user will not see it on the default AEC plans. But we're going to set visible to yes. Make active. If it's set to yes, the subscription will automatically be made active when payment is received from the payment processor. If you set that to no, it will require the admin to actually go into the back end and take the user subscription and take it from pending to active and include. So we want to make this automatic so that there's no intervention required by the administrator. So we'll say make active yes. Primary yes or no. If you set that to no, it becomes a secondary plan. Now if you actually go in and take a look in the links and go actually click on support after you log in, click on manual, and then come down unto memberships. What's a membership? It gives you a definition of a primary and secondary membership. In AEC, a user can have only one primary and an infinite number of secondary memberships. Basically, the primary membership is what controls the underlying access to the site. So they must have at least one primary membership. Let's come back in here to the plans, and we're going to say primary yes. Now if this was a secondary plan, the update existing switch, either yes or no, would pertain to this plan. And what it means by update existing is, for example, you sell secondary membership and you want to be able to sell more than one secondary membership. Then you would set update existing to no. If you wanted that same secondary membership to always be updated when they came back and bought this plan again, then you would set that to yes. Always redirect. You can redirect to a different URL every time a person clicks on this item from the plans page. Like let's say it's not available right now, or you're not going to allow it to be sold to a certain date. You could put a always redirect on there and take them to a Joomla article explaining that, and then remove it when you want them to be able to process the plan. Under groups, you assign what group you want this plan to go to. Free, for right now, let's just set this to yes, and let's set lifetime to yes. And I want to hit apply real quick here just to show you something. Now, under groups here, I can also assign it to another group if I wanted to, and hit apply. And now it's assigned to two groups. If I want to delete it from one of the groups, I check off on the delete, hit apply at the top, and then you'll notice it actually deletes it from that other group. These two buttons here, direct front end link and direct add to cart, are the links that you would actually use if you want to do linking directly to the plan. So what I usually do at this point in time is I'll bring up some type of notepad of some type, and I will copy and paste this information into my notepad so that I have it if I'm working on the front end for an article. And this first one is a subscription. And the other one is my add to the cart link. But this gives me my direct links to this plan itself. And it's very, very useful, especially if you're creating some kind of custom plans page or you're creating an article where you can say, hey, you can buy this item. And then you have this. Now, depending on the logic flow you're using, whether you're using the shopping cart, you would use this link, the direct add to cart. If you're using the subscription logic flow, you would use the direct front end link. Now let's move our notepad out of the way. Okay, now coming back, in this one, let's get back to cost. Well, let's say we want to actually make this cost some money. So we're going to say $15. And lifetime, yes or no. Now remember, this, when you set this to lifetime, that means they would make one payment of $15 and have lifetime access to the subscription. We're going to make this a recurring subscription of $15 every month. So lifetime we set to no, and we want to set the regular billing period, which is 1 month. We have an option to hide the duration of the plan on the checkout page. Sometimes that makes sense. Now we come down to the Joomla user. Enabling the user group. Let's say, for example, this one actually goes into registered. If we're going to put them into another group besides registered, and we want to actually take them out of that group when they expire, like let's say it's a secondary plan, and we want to put them into shop supplies when they purchase it and then take them out of it, we would use a micro integration called ACL in AEC that would actually apply this particular access group to the user and then take them out afterwards. And we'll cover that in a different video. If you are going to do that, where you're putting them into one of these top group levels, you would actually set this to no if you're going to be using the micro integrator. In this case, we're going to set it to yes. We want them to go into the register group. Now, override activation. We can set this to yes if we want to override the email activation or override the registration email. This is only for Joomla. So if you're using a third-party component such as Job Social K2 or Community Builder, those switches do not work. It is only for straight Joomla registration for the override activation and the override registration email. Then in the last column over here, we have plan relations. By default, when you create a plan, the fallback plan is no plan. This means when the plan expires, all of the expiration actions will happen. If you set a fallback plan, which means when it expires, it will actually, when it reaches its expiration date, it does not expire. It falls back to another plan. And this is something very important to remember in the logic flow. Because if that is the case and you're using a fallback plan, any expiration actions you have triggered on the plan will not take place. So if you decide to do that and you want to use a fallback plan, you'd have to make sure that what you want triggered on the normal expiration of this new plan would actually be triggered on the application of the fallback plan. The other way to get around this is you can leave the fallback plan to no plan, and you can set a default entry plan that if a person does not have a primary subscription, it will put them into it. And that's normally the way that I recommend it so that the expiration actions would take place. Require an active parent basically says only grant the fallback plan if the secondary membership and the primary membership of this user is still active. So you can either set that to yes or no. The default is usually no about 90% of the time. If this is a secondary plan and the person purchases it when they register for your site the first time and they don't have a primary plan that will allow them access to the site, you can set up a standard parent plan or a standard primary plan to be attached to this plan. Shopping cart. The cart behavior inherent means that whatever you set in the global settings of the site itself, whether you said to use the shopping cart, no, that means the inherent behavior would be force direct checkout. If you set it to yes, the inherent cart behavior for the shopping cart would be to add it to the shopping cart. So here you can either leave it at inherent, but if you want to do a mixture, you can actually say, like, let's say, for example, you have the shopping cart turned on, and you want this one not to go to the shopping cart, but to be a forced direct checkout just for that item. You can set it to forced direct checkout. Let's say, for example, you have the shopping cart set to no in your global settings. You can say force the cart to force the shopping cart on this particular plan. We'll leave that to inherent. Now, when they actually go and add this to their cart, you can redirect them to a different page. For example, let's say you're selling something and they add that to their cart, and then you want to redirect them to a page that says, hey, since you bought this, you might be interested in this. And you can actually redirect them to a Joomla article or another plan to try to have them purchase that plan also. Notes is an area where you can put in notes, and by default, the notes are not visible to the user. So you can put yourself little notes in here to keep track of the plan itself. That covers the first tab of the plan settings. Thank you very much.